Tahirah with Crescent. Welcome to our Founding Fridays. And today's topic is going to be what it's like to care for a child with sickle cell disease as parents or as caregivers. So today I have my lovely parents. Say hello and introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Trevor. Hello.
Hi, I'm Cheryl.
And we are at our lovely home. And today's conversation is going to be um, supporting our caregivers out there who are raising children or who are supporting young adults living with sickle cell disease, as my parents have for me. And so I wanted to start with the beginning of my diagnosis because my sickle cell story is quite different from many of my peers. Although I was born in the 80s, I was born in 1986, I wasn't diagnosed with sickle cell disease until I was 6 years old. And much of that, those factors can be left up to whomever you ask. Some people, when I tell this story, they think that it's because of the hospital that I was born at, which is Chestnut Hill Hospital. And others just think that I was just because I was a full-term pregnancy and I didn't have the look per se of a sickly child or a sick baby or infant, that I wasn't tested at birth. And so I went 6 years undiagnosed with sickle cell disease type SS. And so for my dad, let's start with him because he was there at for all of it. So let's start with me as an infant. And did you ever notice things as a baby when I was a baby that were different when it came to my weight gain, or if you thought that my cries were cries of pain, or was I just normal?
You were healthy, baby.
So I was a healthy baby. Great. So let's skip to when I was 6, because I can remember being at Thomas Holmes in the Northeast, which is an elementary school here in Philadelphia. Um, but I can also remember being like the days leading up to um, when I was in school and I passed out. So I can remember constantly complaining about my stomach, having pain in my stomach. But if as a child looking back on it, it felt like just a terrible stomach ache. Just, like something that I've never felt before, but I can only explain it as somebody like sticking a knife in you, but in the same place. And so I can remember being at school and um, like kind of blacking out because of pain. But my dad, a nurse telling me to hear your dad is on his way, and my dad coming to get me. But after that, it gets spotty, and I can't. The next thing I remember is just being at CHOP at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. So what happened from there? Can you remember picking me up from Thomas Holmes and taking me to CHOP? Or did we go to CHOP first, or did we go to somewhere else?
No, you went straight to CHOP.
Okay.
Well, you were sick before. Well, you were home from school before that with stomach pains.
Mm. But never have gone to the hospital for those stomach
And then
pains.
when you passed out in school, you were in kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
That's when they called me, and that's when I came.
Right.
And we went straight to CHOP.
So when we get the CHOP, um, did we have to wait? Because I know back then the ED wasn't as separated as it is now.
We went right in.
I went right in. And did it take long for them to give me or give you all a diagnosis of sickle cell?
Yeah, it took a while.
Okay. So none of it was all in the same day?
Yes.
Or when you heard, did you already know what sickle cell was?
Nope.
You never had heard of it?
But I had heard of it, but I didn't.
You didn't
I
know.
thought it was a fatal disease. So.
Okay. Oh, like I was going to die immediately?
Or very shortly thereafter, yeah.
Really? This is with before of them like giving you any type of education.
Right, exactly.
Is that what usually happen, like in other places, or like when you because you thought it was a fatal disease?
Well, I knew it was a disease without a cure.
Right.
So that means death in my book.
Right. So can you remember when, like the feeling when Dr. Kim Smith, because at the time she wasn't Kim Smith Whitley, she was just Kim Smith, but was it her that came in the room that told you?
She came up and talked to us.
Okay.
And calmed me down. Yeah.
Talk about why did she have to calm you down, or like what was happening?
Because I thought you were going to die.
There
or
shortly?
Shortly, yeah.
Because of the amount of pain that I was in. I could remember being in a lot of pain during those
But
days.
you were out of it too, and didn't they say something about surgery?
Already?
Not then.
Okay.
So she came out and she calmed you down, and then
So she said you were going to be okay.
Okay. So then, what was her conversation like?
Well, she just said that you're going to be okay. You're not going to die.
Mm.
Things you can do, even though there's no cure.
Right. How did you feel doing that? It wasn't a cure.
That it was going to kill you.
Did you ever blame yourself at any time?
No, it was a mystery to me. The only thing I knew is that there was no cure for sickle cell.
Right. All right. So then, Mom, you was already in the picture. So then, did you already know about sickle cell? Because to me, I feel like you did because you were tested in college.
Because I was tested in college, and that's where I knew about it.
So how did you support Dad knowing that he just got this diagnosis?
You know what? Regardless of what, God have you, and with prayer, you're gonna be all right. With prayer and proper eating habits, and you'll be fine.
From that time when I got sick, was I sick often after that?
Yep.
Yeah. It seemed like every week you were in the hospital.
Every month you were in the hospital.
I said week.
Every month. Yep.
How did that affect both of y'all with your jobs? Like needing to take off, or who's going to stay with Elijah? Who's going to do this?
I had a lot of leeway on my job, so.
Really?
Plus, it didn't matter. When it was time to go, I left.
Right. Regardless.
You were more important than the job, so he do what he had to do.
I think that's important for a lot of parents, because I know I find myself as the community health worker and the researcher at CHOP helping many parents like do FMLA forms for their job so that they can keep it, although they've missed a lot of time with not even with hospitalizations, but just the appointment scheduling. And
there was no FMLA then.
Really?
No.
So when did FMLA come about?
Long after that.
So you just
that came out like in the 90s?
The late 90s, yeah.
Wow. So you just would tell your manager or who that you gotta go?
Yeah.
Did you ever have to tell them why you were leaving, or you never needed to explain that far?
My daughter's sick.
Okay.
Gotta go.
I think one of the, not complaints, but what we hear when we're in clinic from parents is, I'm trying to keep this position because I want my child to have this type of insurance, this good insurance. So they need support keeping, their jobs. So that's why we try to do anything on our end and as the hospital staff to like write up type of letters saying, they'll be on, this particular patient is on a 3-month like scheduled rotation of their appointments, or this parent will have to accompany their child every 4 weeks for chronic blood transfusion. But also being privy that their medical information is private to the employer. So always making sure that the parent wants us and gives us permission and signs off on that to share with the employer. But that's interesting.
So you shouldn't have to choose between your child and your job.
Right.
That shouldn't be a choice.
So we left off at you shouldn't have to choose between your job and your child. But let's explain that some more, Dad. And you, Mom, too.
Well, suppose you had one of the more popular diseases.
What, like a type of cancer?
That affected the greater population.
Right.
There wouldn't be a question.
No, you will get a lot more empathy as well.
Right.
So yeah, I understand that.
I think also with the two of us, he was in Philadelphia, working in Philadelphia, so he will always, once you hospitalized, he's there.
Right.
Even if I say, I'll go today, let's take turns.
Yeah.
He was always there.
No, yeah. Just because he was in the city and already.
The school would call my job if you get sick at school.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And I can remember at Mifflin, the nurse there, she was a Black woman because she was really nice. I think this was when, so now we're fast forwarding to when I had my surgery, and I had my spleen, my gallbladder, and my appendix removed.
Right, you were going to Mifflin before you had your surgery.
Oh yeah, I was. See how spotty it is for me? I was going to Mifflin already. But this particular nurse, she was just a really nice nurse. And I don't know why she sticks out, because I don't know if I was going down to her office to
was it a
take
nurse
medicine.
Or the principal?
No, the principal was heavy set.
Miss Clayton.
Miss Clayton, Cynthia Clayton, I remember her, but no, this nurse, she was tall, she was dark skinned, and she had like a short haircut. But she would come and get me from class just to check on me or make sure that I was hydrated. And especially during this time, I think this is when you had to always let them know that I needed to go to the bathroom. And this, like even today, this is a problem with our children, like getting in trouble because they just walk out. But Dad gave me permission that if I needed to go to the restroom and I asked and they told me no, to get up and go, and he would deal with it later. And I thought that, to me, that always stood out because, and even with you, Mom, you will always tell us, even with telling the truth, tell the truth, because even if they're wrong, I'll deal with it. Mm-hmm. But as long as you tell the truth, then, it's nothing on my end. The truth will set you free. But I can remember this boy getting up in my classroom and peeing in the closet because the teacher wouldn't let him go to the bathroom. And I just sat there like, why didn't you just get up and walk out of the class? And he had a chronic illness as well. It wasn't sickle cell, it was something else. But I can't remember. I remember his name though. Mm-hmm. But that's something that we always talk about with our parents, or that they complain about, like my child isn't allowed, they only get 2 bathroom breaks during class. Or we need to write a letter saying that they should have water at their desk to stay hydrated, or be able to wear a jacket in the classroom. Like those type of things. People, a lot of teachers don't understand it because they don't understand sickle cell, but a lot of parents don't know how to advocate for their children on those particular things that they need to just be comfortable with being educated while they're in a classroom.
But it's also beneficial for the children to communicate with the parent
what's going
on in the school, because if you didn't tell us, we wouldn't know.
Right. Right.
So in no way we could advocate for that.
Yeah.
I think it was a couple of times their father had to go to the school and talk to them.
Yeah.
And they were very familiar with me. I think
Well, how were they familiar with you?
teachers and principals, like in the greater community, evaluate parents.
Mm.
You know, and they put them on a scale and whether they could ignore what they're saying
or whether this is an involved parent.
Exactly.
Yeah, they didn't know
You
my
know,
dad.
if they think you're nobody, they ain't pay you no attention.
Yeah, because they probably hardly see your parents there.
Exactly, and a lot of times, like at Midland, a lot of kids were coming from Abbotsford projects, and
yeah, we were bust in.
Right, and the parents weren't involved; they were young parents.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so.
But that's also with the hospital too.
Well, that's like in
You have
anything
to,
else. That's in society, you know, people size you up.
Right.
You know, how you carry yourself and how you project yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Rather, you know.
In the hospital, if you don't know, you don't communicate with the doctors, try to find out what's going on. You just sit there and wait for them. You wouldn't get any answers. You wouldn't know what to do. You know, you're already in a crisis. You're already stressed.
Right.
So, you need to ask questions, and you need to have them communicate with you what's going on and how they're going to care for your child.
Right.
And,
how do you teach that to your child, though? How do y'all think? What were things that y'all taught me? Because I feel like I only know how to advocate for myself because of you all.
Well, for me, I felt like you going through the situation, you should know your body. You know the signs. You know what to look for. You know, and by you getting sick like that, it's your body. So I try to have you communicate for yourself. Ask questions. Ask so that you could get the knowledge to know how to take care of yourself.
Right.
You know, like you said, in school, we are not with you.
No, right.
So you need to know what's going on, how you feel, communicate that to the teacher or whoever. If you need to have them call us to come get you, to go, take you to the hospital. You know when a crisis is coming on.
Right.
The best person to know that is the individual.
Right. Yeah.
So, we will support you. We're there for you, but you have to know how to take care of your body. If you remember in the winter time, I always used to be fussing with you. You gotta dress properly. Don't expose yourself. Those little jackets you want to wear instead of a coat.
Yeah. Oh, I learned.
Or no shirt, no coat, but a sweater.
Yeah.
No undershirt.
I learned my lessons.
You want to cover your head.
Yeah.
No scarf.
Around my neck.
There you go. Now you know.
Yeah.
And it helped.
It did help because when I didn't, I always tell people my worst time with being an adult with sickle cell disease is during the winters. And that's usually when I get acute chest syndrome. But I haven't had acute chest. I haven't had a hospitalization in 3 years. And thank God. But I also haven't had acute chest in probably like 5 years. Chemo is 3.5 years. So it had to be around 5 years. And that just was strictly off of dressing better and eating better. Yeah. That I had. And that was one of the complications of sickle cell that I always had. Like many people go through or had different complications. Some people suffer from extreme chronic pain. That never was one of my complaints. I would get sick in the winter and complain about my chest, or I would get a cold and it would turn. The cold would last for so long, and then before you know it, I was in a hospital with acute chest syndrome. So we talked about what it's like.
Drinking hot tea too.
and drinking hot tea. Drinking hot tea in the morning. We had this conversation with my friends a while ago. I got a lot of friends who are coffee drinkers, and I can't stand coffee. But I'm a tea drinker. But I'm a tea drinker because of you. Of before we leave in this house, of having something warm go down in your chest every morning. But it works and it feels good. And then also you get used to treating your body a lot better, especially with living with a chronic illness such as sickle cell. So let's go into. So we talked about how it affected your job. I want to get into more of, your feelings of how to divvy up time between having 3 children. And
at the time it was only 2.
Well, yeah, it was just me and Elijah. through especially the bulk of everything, really, because I feel like by the time Alex came, I don't know, I don't find myself having so many hospitalizations when by the time Alex came. I think most of my hospitalizations were between elementary and middle school, right?
Well, after you had your surgery, you start to improve. You just had to take your antibiotics.
The penicillin. Why was the choice made to I know about my spleen, the splenic sequestration, but why my gallbladder and my appendix as well?
Because they were all infected or affected. And they did all 3 at one time.
Right.
One shot.
Yeah.
They brought in a surgeon from Johns Hopkins to do your surgery.
Really? I didn't know that. I remember them saying that they took 2 of the organs through my belly button.
So your spleen was as big as a football.
Yeah. And my spleen, and I still have my spleen from my scar.
A scar.
Yeah. After the surgery, how long was I out of school or receiving work from?
You were out of school for a while because my mom came down from New York to stay with you while I went to work.
I remember that on Henry Avenue, right?
And then you stayed with my
mom.
Howie.
Yeah. So I feel like that was in the summer. Did CHOP have teachers, or because for some reason, or did they
was getting the school from
Mifflin?
From Mifflin, yeah.
Okay. So they were giving me schoolwork. Okay.
You were homeschooled.
I was the first. But I didn't. Well, obviously I did well because it wasn't like I needed to be left back or anything from.
You were a class ahead.
Right. Because didn't I go into another reading class?
Yeah, you were a class ahead.
Wow, and that was from being sick, and then I wound up ahead. I remember leaving always remember leaving my reading class, going to another reading class with the older children, but I didn't know why.
I think you felt like you had to keep up.
I still feel like that. I think I've always felt like I'm always playing catch up. Yeah.
I don't know why, because you graduated early.
I don't know, but I think it's not just me. I find that with a lot of my peers who have sickle cell, we're always, maybe it's the pressure we put on ourselves, but I always feel like I'm either playing catch up or I need to be ahead of the game somehow because I'm already working with something that can put me behind. And I never want to feel like I'm so behind or I'm so lost because of sickle cell. So
I don't know if it was the sickle cell. As far as that goes, I think it was your natural ability because you were honor student, throughout high school.
Yeah.
So, and there were other students in the class or at the school who didn't have any diseases, who weren't doing as good as you were academically. So,
No, but I think it can. I never wanted someone to use it against me.
okay.
That you can't do it because you
You're
have
sick.
you're sick. Or I understand you may not understand because you're sick. And so that for me has always been like a motivation to work harder. But I've also found, especially as
And
I've
then
gotten
you
older,
have always had good support.
yes,
And
very
that's a key right there. If you don't have good support,
Stable house.
a stable
stable
home.
home,
Yeah,
regular meals,
Mhm.
cooked meals, no fast food.
no, yes,
That
that has a lot to do with it because of the worry. I didn't have certain worries as a child that other children may have. That's due to social economics or their house, the type of household they live in or come from. So I could just focus on school. I had the ability to do that. But I think also what used to be difficult is when I actually did miss a chunk of time of school and not really catching up with schoolwork, but just trying to catch up with like kind of life, because I feel like a big span I've missed out. And I noticed that in college when I wouldn't remember conversations. So if I was in the hospital and you and I had a conversation, after I left the hospital, I didn't remember it. So I started getting used to telling people to text me, because then I can refer back to
I
whatever.
remember having conversation with you, and later on I'm telling you, and you're like, I don't remember saying
nothing like that,
and
right?
you said, I think, and I said maybe it's the medicine.
But it's the medicine. But I also find I've talked to people my age who have sickle cell as well. I think it's just the whole environment and whatever trauma you're going through at that time, you kind of try to forget it. I can't explain it, but I know I can never recall conversations once I'm like after hospitalization. I don't know what you're talking about. You can tell me I said this. You can record
nasty
me.
Conversations.
and I believe them, because when I had chemo, Aunt Crystal had to apologize to the nurses on my behalf, and I don't remember any of it. And Ayana was there, and she confirmed, like, no, Tahirah, you did not want to be bothered. You told them to get the H out your room. So I think it's a combination of both. Of I don't want to remember whatever the trauma I was going through, and the medicine just makes me out of my mind.
Talking about medicine out of your mind, your father came into the hospital and found you.
Oh yeah, that was the last traumatic episode I ever had. And that's when, and I can remember that because it was like an angel. No, seriously, I think at that point I gave up. I had really I got tired, and I can remember them giving me a blood transfusion, and I pulled it out, and Dad found me on the floor.
Early in the morning.
Early in the
Before
morning.
he would go to work, he'll come see you.
So every day, my dad, it doesn't matter what at any hospitalization, my dad went to work early anyway. So before he would get to work, he would stop at the hospital to see me. So sometimes it was so early that the security would let you in, right? Because no one knows, it wouldn't be open for patient visitation yet, but they knew my dad would be coming and the security would let him in. And it would be between 5 and 6 a.m. in the morning. One particular morning, this was my last serious hospitalization. And this was due to, I had a delayed hemolytic transfusion reaction, which is when you receive a blood transfusion, and because I've received so many over the years, I have so many antibodies that this particular blood transfusion didn't go well with my body. And so my body reacted, and it was the worst pain I had ever experienced. To me, it's worse than a sickle cell crisis. But my hemoglobin dropped to a 2, so I needed to receive another unit of blood. And I think I was physically tired, I was mentally tired, and I don't want to say that I was like going to commit suicide or anything, but I had given up, and I pulled out my blood transfusion cord out of my port. And just as I pulled it out and was on the floor, my dad walked in and picked me up off the floor, called the nurses, and I'm here today to tell it. But I can remember that. You remember that, Dad?
I remember that.
That was at Presby.
Yeah.
They
had you in the back room.
In the back room.
By yourself. I forgot about you.
Yeah. And they moved me to the front.
And put a nurse in there with you.
Yeah, and put somebody to watch me.
After you first.
Well, you have to be aggressive as a parent, so I didn't take no for an answer. And I was very aggressive. I was even aggressive with Dr. Kim, if you remember that.
Why you was aggressive with Dr. Kim? She probably do, because Dr. Kim always bring you up with her with her examples.
You have to bring a document saying that you somebody else. She used to give him a hard way to go.
Why did you think she did? Or you think she was just trying to be to cover her bases as being a good doctor?
I wanted the best care for you.
Right.
And I wanted answers after I started doing my homework,
Things didn't.
I wanted answers.
Yeah.
So I had questions.
I guess she probably find you difficult because you always want an answer.
And
I didn't back off or back down.
Right. Right now we're doing a project where CHOP receives a lot of families from the Caribbean and different parts of West Africa. So actually one of my duties is to note that we received this family, their origin is from Jamaica, whether it's one parent or whether it's both parents, because that kind of tells us with certain genotypes, which we're at is the most people who have SS, or where in West Africa do people have SC. So you can kind of trace it back. Did anyone, and I feel like we just started doing this because of noticing, and then also needing translation. When a lot of our West African families would come, we would have to get French translators or someone who speaks Arabic, because that would be their first language. But did you ever feel like you received different treatment, or they weren't talking to you like you understood because you were from the Caribbean?
Oh no.
Oh. Sometimes that can be a barrier. Right, can be a barrier.
Oh yeah. Like I said, they size you up and evaluate you by the way you present yourself, how much, liberty they can take with you. And that's in anything, not just sickle cell, that's in life, period.
Right.
So
I think that's important to know. And we especially try to make all of these, have these support systems in clinic, so it wouldn't be a whole bunch of barriers for our family into receiving good, compassionate care from us. But sometimes, people slip through the cracks and we miss some. Do you think it's still a traumatic experience with having an adult child with a chronic illness? Like, do you think, what are your thoughts now, especially now that I'm a mom and I do and I'm working and I'm living the best normal life that I can live, but do you still have thoughts that something bad could happen? Or do you think that the technology and the science has, made its way, has come so far that, I should be able to live a long,
well, you should be, because I thought you had excellent care as a child. I think people went out of their way for you.
Why do you think that? Because I think people do go out their way for me, even as an adult. I feel like people, if I called and I act, like even with any situations I've had as an adult patient, if I called back to my medical team there, they wouldn't let it go. Like they would help me through it, or help me see my way through it with any type of support. But why do you think they always, or people do that for me? Because I think I had excellent care at CHOP as well. Especially when I hear about other people, the pediatric care centers that they went to.
They kept you there till you were in your mid-20s.
Yeah, that's the joke. That's still the running joke. I was the oldest. I was the oldest patient to transition. Yeah. I transitioned at 23 years old.
Yeah, 24.
Yeah. And even then, it was still.
They didn't want to transition.
They didn't want to. Right. So it didn't. It was like my call at that point. Like.
Got to a point where you could, they just put you in a room by yourself.
Yeah.
They wouldn't even put another kid
child in there. I would have a whole room
to yourself. They just leave you alone.
And why do you think that was?
I thought that was because I had good insurance.
That too.
Once I started learning about the insurance world, I started realizing, like, you got what type of insurance? No, I think my parents got personal choice, so. And I started.
That played a big role.
Yeah, and I started realizing, like, that matters. What type of insurance, how you're treated, how the different medications, if you want to get a brand, like even as an inpatient, like it matters on how the type of medication that they will bring up to your floor. All of that matters on your type of insurance, which is quite unfair because of the country that we living in. I feel like if I have sickle cell and another person has sickle cell, whatever the medication that's out there, that's the best medication we all should be getting. And it shouldn't be based on if or affordability or status. Right. But no, yeah, that's what what were you going to say? That it wasn't just insurance.
No, I think it's the way you carry yourself too, and you having the knowledge of the illness and asking, researching, trying to find out what's the best, help, or what's the best medication, or what's the best treatment.
Right. Do you remember when I did my project on hydroxyurea?
Mm-hmm, I remember that.
No one. Only Dr. Kim had to confirm with people. No one will believe me that this doctor let me go without taking hydroxyurea. And it wasn't that she let me go without taking. She understood that I had did enough, how I felt. Yeah. And I did enough background research to say that for myself, I didn't want it. And I thought that was for her, especially as the premier doctor, we hold Dr. Kim on this pedestal when it comes to sickle cell research. And that's one of her.
Yeah. I am not taking that. I don't want it. No.
And
she was pushing.
Yeah. and I didn't take it. And I was quite fine for years without needing hydroxyurea. So
God, make people look like zombies.
mm-hmm. No, I think one of my things especially going into high school, was just people asking me questions about my eyes, like why your eyes yellow or green, and having to answer that question. But other than that, I didn't go through. I always hear people who tell stories of being bullied because they have sickle cell disease, and that's not my experience. I never went through that. But I don't think it's not my experience because of of sickle cell. I think it's not my experience just because of who I am. You will have a hard time bullying.
Knowing that you're sick. You're going to be sick, and people really couldn't tell.
Right, yeah.
On the outside.
Yeah. Mm-mm. No. And then also because I wasn't, even in pain, when I told you all that I was in pain, it wasn't like I was crying or out of my mind. But that's also kind of bit me in the behind as an adult, because how the healthcare system, if you're not losing your dignity, then they tend to not take you serious or pay attention. And so I can remember experiencing that as my first time going to Presby's ED, once transitioning from child.
But they were treating you like you were a
drug addict. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, you would come in and you would write on this little white card, what's your problem? And in a box would say, like complication, and you put sickle cell. And the minute you put that, it was like, well, you might as well sit there and wait forever. And when you came up to the receptionist and asked, am I going to be seen? When does a nurse come in? They would just give you a answer. I don't know. It's a lot of people back there. What do you need? Because you may not. They will automatically assume like you're not going to get any morphine, and I never was on morphine. So for you to even name drop that as what I came here for, that's when I started learning this adult system. It's not the same like child. Ain't no more McDonald's.
And order what you want.
There's no playroom. They treat you like a real adult here, huh? And by that time, I was out of college. He was but when I transitioned out of CHOP, I was already working at CHOP and still coming there for care. That's when I knew that the adult world they were trying to eat me alive. But I feel like I had great advocates in my parents. So that's what led me down this. I love research, but I like advocacy, because those who are not as confident as I am, or don't want to share their voice, I don't have the need to tell my story anymore. I've noticed I can tell the stories of my peers, because they go through a lot worse things than I've ever been through with having sickle cell disease. I know people who have 2 hip replacements, chronic blood transfusions. I can say I've had a pretty normal adult life. I've gotten to travel. I've gotten to teach abroad. A lot of things that a lot of my friends haven't gotten a chance to do because the complications that have come with sickle cell disease. What else would you like to add there as a parent?
I don't know. I'll work with someone who has sickle cell, a young kid, young adult.
Accepted?
Yeah. And he used to have a hard time.
Really?
They would give him a hard time.
On the job?
When he was sick, on the job, taking time off,
and
all that, like I said. But me, it was always smooth sailing.
Why it gave him a hard time? Do you think it was because he was male? Because I find that.
Yeah, but.
Because he was a black man.
Yeah.
Because I find that we are treated different.
And they probably, they don't know about the disease. So
no.
It's not, well, now it's popular.
Well,
only and not
know,
not as,
you hear more about it now, but back then it didn't.
Right.
Even then, as long as it was something that in their mind just affected the black community,
right,
it was fine with them.
But now you see a couple white faces.
It's as there, how you present yourself, how you carry yourself and stuff. I didn't take no for an answer, and I challenged them every time. So they got used to me, and whatever I wanted, they said, "Trevor, you go.
Right.
Don't even bother finishing that. Just go.
Let's go."
Yeah. So
I would say as a parents, you gotta have good support system. You gotta be able to support each other, plus the sick child.
Right. What about
things communicating between the child and the parents, as far as the treatment, you need communication. Yeah.
Teacher, like I said, Miss Clayton, school nurse.
Even if the parents
the secretary at the school.
Yeah, I remember.
Even if the parents is not together and separated.
Yeah, how does that work?
It's very important because, it's a child. And to care for the child, everybody, it's all hands on deck.
Yeah. You
can't be, you got to put aside all the differences and think about the treatment for the child. I think that is so important.
How do you make sure that the other children, or siblings, are getting just the same amount of attention, or feel like they're not being left out when it comes to caring for a child with?
Well, I don't think we had a problem with that.
I don't think so either.
And Elijah at the time, it was just you two.
Yeah.
And you all were close.
Right.
And how much he knew of your sickle cell, I'm not sure, but he knew when you will get sick, because sometimes he will even come and get us.
Right.
To let us know that you're not feeling well.
Right.
And he was very concerned when you're in the hospital. He'd want to go see you. So, he knew in his own way, he knew that, something wasn't right. Yeah.
And then with me and Alex, we're 15 years apart. So,
right. I think Alex wanted to be, to say he had an illness.
Yeah. Well,
that's where you're talking about attention.
Yeah.
That's where that one came in.
Yeah.
Because I remember when we would go to the hospital to see you, he will, I
got juice. Oh yeah.
No, I don't feel well. To the nurses, just to get that attention. My head hurt.
But no, the thing that always tickled me is when he would say, I got sickle cell, I got G6PD. And I'd be like,
but he does have this G6PD.
He does have G6PD. But this was at camp. At camp, someone said, yeah, I didn't know it was you and your brother who had sickle cell. I'm like, my brother don't got sickle cell. I'm like, no, he has another type of blood disorder, but it's not sickle cell. But I don't think me and Alex ever had a competition thing when it came for attention. Or him feeling left out. I just think that instance, he wanted some attention, but he was small enough to want attention. Right?
Well, yeah. Even with Elijah, when he was in the hospital, Alex felt like he needed some attention from the nurse.
Alex is a trip. But what would you suggest to other parents on how they should? How could they deal with that, or balance that if there are other siblings in the house who don't have a chronic illness, but you always spending your time with the one that is.
You gotta learn to share. However,
right.
If it's two parents, I think one need to spend time with that other one,
right.
But you also need to let that child know that. Your brother or your sister has an illness, and sometimes it's gonna, take away from the time that you and I share together.
Right.
But every chance you get, you will have to share your time with that other child.
Absolutely.
Even if it means including them, into the visits.
Right.
And
yeah.
You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. I think that was a good suggestion. What would y'all want to add before we end?
We're glad you're here.
I am too. Thank God, right? Yes, y'all did very well. Y'all should be very proud of yourselves. And that is a wrap for another Founding Fridays evening with my parents, and another episode talking to my parents about what it's like raising a child with sickle cell disease. So stay tuned for another episode next Friday with whoever is our co-founder that's up next. Thanks, everyone.